Welcome back to Chanel's Court, where we dive deep into the intersection of sports law and culture. Today, we're talking about one of the most compelling sports docuseries in recent history, and that's Last Chance U. For those who don't know, Last Chance U is a Netflix series that pulls back the curtain on junior college football, following athletes who are fighting for a second shot at their dreams, and some who are just trying to get that next step into Division I college football. So two of the most well-known players from the series are joining us today, John Franklin III and DeAndre Johnson. Thank you both for joining me today. Both of them were high-profile starts at MCC and also transferred from Division I institutions. And we're also joined by their attorney, Andrew Green. Thank you guys all for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the lawsuit, I want to give you all the opportunity to introduce yourselves to those who've been living under a rock and didn't actually watch the series. John, I'm going to start with you. So you were a transfer from Florida State, and you're also from Florida. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay, go ahead.
Broward County boy, where the best football is played, in my opinion.
I'm in Texas, but I'm not gonna disagree with that. I went to UMass, and our football roster was stacked with Florida boys, and y'all all come in with the same swag, the goals,
Mhm.
the energy. Like the Florida branding is strong. So tell me about how you went from FSU to Scuba, Mississippi.
Out of high school, I was new to playing the quarterback position, unlike DeAndre, who played it all his life. I was new. So I just kind of went. I knew I wasn't gonna be starting because Jameis was already there, but I just kind of wanted to learn. And Coach Fisher was known as the quarterback guru. So I just went to where I figured the best was. Got there, we won a national championship. My role that year while I was redshirting was to be like the scout team quarterback.
Mhm.
So grew in that experience. Jameis took me in his wing. That's where I really kind of learned football. And then I ran track as well. Won a couple of ACC indoor outdoor championship rings with that. And after that, Jameis stayed again. So then that was my redshirt freshman year. So that's 2 years. So then once Jameis left, the competition was between me and Sean, and it didn't go the way that I wanted to, in my opinion. So I just felt like at that time I just should have left because even when Jameis was there, I was already trying to play another position just to get on the field, and it
Mhm.
just wasn't kind of be taken serious in my opinion. So I ended up leaving. And being from Florida, we didn't have any JUCOs, so I just kind of thought JUCOs was for like people that like got in trouble or they didn't have grades and stuff. Like I wasn't in that situation. I just didn't want to go down a level because during that time it wasn't a portal. So if I went down
Mhm.
a level, I would have had to stay there to play. But if I would have went to another Division 1, then I would have had to sit out. So Coach Trickett, who was a quarterback, Clint Trickett was a quarterback at Florida State before me. He ended up getting a quarterback job at EMCC, and I went and visited it. He was like, "You could come here, you could play, then you could go back D1." And I just heard 6 months, and I heard back to D1, so I just kind of went with it.
Right. And I think a lot of things that people don't know about JUCO is there's actually scholarships at that level. Is that right?
Yeah, Mississippi Junior College is one of the, most sought after, high talented JUCO regions in the country, due to the SEC being around that area as well. So it's a lot of talent. When we went to school, it was only 6 kids from out of state. So everybody else was really from Mississippi. Uh, so yeah, you got to be real selective when it comes down to certain JUCO regions. But California is a big one. Kansas is another big one.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to go to wherever the best was. So at the
Mhm.
time, EMCC was the one that was winning all the national championships, and they was putting players out like Chad Kelly, Bo Wallace, stuff like that. So I just went to the best at the time.
Right. And help provide a little bit of context for everybody. What year is this all going down?
This is going down 2015. Yeah,
Mhm.
about 2015. That summer is when because I decided to transfer late. So another reason why I went to JUCO is because when I was going to certain schools, they were already full on scholarships. I was gonna go to UCF, but they already had all their scholarships taken accounted for, and so I was like, all right, I don't want to get stuck at just any school, so that's why I took the JUCO route.
Right, that makes sense. And then DeAndre coming your way, also a Florida State transfer, correct?
Correct, correct.
Also a Florida boy, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is it about the pipeline from Florida, FSU quarterback position? But anyway, walk me through how your journey at FSU and then when you came to MCC.
Yeah, well, just like John said, I'm another Florida boy. Like I said, Florida got the best talent when it comes to playing football, I'll tell you that. I could argue with him there about South Florida having the best talent, me being from Jacksonville, which is North Florida, and then also being a Mr. Florida, so I think I got my argument there. But yeah, so going throughout high school, I actually got a chance to meet John like throughout my high school year. As he said, he was a member of the Florida State team in 2013, and that was, a real pivotal time for me because, I was already committed, and so I was able to like go up around the facility maybe about every other weekend. John, I was damn near part of the team around that time. But it was a chance where I met John and met Jameis, and they kind of like put me on underneath their wing and kind of like help me learn how to be a college quarterback. When I was in high school. So, that's how I first met John right there. Right, every time I would come, he always like show me love, and like Jameis, mentored him. He mentored me as well. And so with that being said, fast forward, that spring, we're all in the same room competing, whatnot. John decides to transfer. Um, I get into a situation my freshman year. Um, so later that summer, going into that fall, I end up, leaving the program. And at the time, I didn't know where I was going to end up going. And it just so happened that, like John said, Clint Trickett was the QB coach there. And it was a pipeline from Florida State to East Mississippi. And like you said, coming from Florida, we don't know what JUCOs are. Never heard of them. Especially being, a Florida guy, you only could like training to be a Division I guy. It's either Florida State, Florida, Alabama, or whatever. We're not looking at nothing else. And so I was, going through the process of trying to find another school, and I wanted a situation where I wanted to maintain my eligibility. So I wanted to keep an extra year, and it just so happened that Coach Trickett reached out, Coach Wood reached out, um, and got the chance to talk to John and Coach Trick and like, hey man, come over here. You can come here. You can sit for a year and play next season, man, and then get re-recruited all over again. So that was kind of how my situation started. With going to East Mississippi.
Right. Right. So both of y'all essentially are in this position where, you're at your first Division I institution, is SEC ball, you're in your home state, um, not getting the opportunity that you all want, I would say, you're not starting behind, I mean, Jameis Winston of all people. So transfer to this JUCO program, then you're gonna grind it out or rehabilitate yourself and then jump up to that next level. So it sounds like you all had the right mentality, right energy going into it. Tell me what it was like when you pulled into scuba for the first time. Like, was it that sigh of like, wee, like scuba Mississippi, like what's good? Like, tell me about that because that has to be a huge transition again from FSU to begin with, but to go to Scuba, Mississippi, a JUCO program. Tell me about that transition.
I'm gonna let you go first, Dre, on this one.
All right. Well, for me, like I said, it was kind of different. It was definitely a culture shock. For one, like I said, I was in a process where, for me, it was unique because I packed up my apartment in Tallahassee, and I left straight after summer school. And the next day I was packed up the car and I drove down to Mississippi, which was kind of, unique because I never really told anyone this story. Was that when I first entered Mississippi, and when I first entered scuba, I was happened to be driving because scuba there's like it's kind of like one way in, one way out type of town, and it's a one stoplight town. So you got to go through some back roads and stuff to get there, right? So during the process of getting there, man, I'm like, at first, you're anxious, you're excited, you know what to expect. And I'm happy to be driving, and I happen to look to the right. I'm about 10 minutes, 10 miles or so from the school. And I look to the right, and there's all type of trucks just on the side of the road. I'm like, wow, that's kind of. I'm like, man, it's like 8, 9 p.m. I'm like, why is everybody in the woods? So I'm driving, and then I get a little further up, and I look, and I kid you not, like I see just flames, going off inside the woods. And true story. And I happen to look, and I kid you not, you see a burning cross in the middle of the woods.
Mm.
Kid you not, kid you not. That was my first encounter with coming into Mississippi. And at that point, I'm kind of shocked because I'm like, what, did I just see what I thought I just seen?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept on riding and whatnot, man. And I get it to the school, and I meet the coaches and whatnot, and I end up talking to some players. I'm like, hey man, like I just seen the craziest thing coming in here, man. Like it seemed like it was I don't know, it was a Ku Klux Klan or it was some type of seminar ceremony going on over there, man. And it kind of freaked me out. Like, yeah, man, it's Mississippi, man. Don't worry about it, man. We glad you made it. As long as you made it here at this campus, and you're within these gates, you're gonna be safe. And I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, wow. And then I started to remember, at Philadelphia, Mississippi, and Meridian, stuff like that. And then, Emmett Till. I'm like, oh shit, what did I get myself into? So
Yeah.
that was my first encounter with coming to Mississippi. So I was like, okay, cool. But once I got there, I was a lot more calm and just ready to, start school and start playing football.
Right, right. What about you, John?
Uh, that's crazy, by the way. That's wild. I ain't even know that. But nah, like definitely experience maybe not to that extreme, but definitely, Mississippi is in its own, but me going to Florida State was a culture shock for me. Being from South Florida, 30 minutes from Miami, like it's a very fast-paced lifestyle. And then even going to Tallahassee was such a different lifestyle. But then you take it, now I went to Mississippi, I'm like, where am I? Like, it just felt like everything was
Yeah.
10 years behind what I was used to. Music, fashion, like,
Mm-hmm.
everything was just set way, way back. And then, like Dre said, like, you pull up in the town, like, I mean, the closest McDonald's was like 30 minutes. Like, that's a bop to get a little, you know what I'm saying,
Not
McFlurry and a
McDonald's.
and a McChicken. Yeah. Walmart's 45 minutes away from us. All we really had within our like one stop like town was like a Subway that was attached to a gas station. It was another gas station on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have like pizza and stuff. And then it was like a Dollar General, maybe like 10 minutes up the road.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's just the school and nothing else for real. Like, so it was definitely a culture shock. Everything just felt so slow motion, just because of the pace that we were at. And then, like, I'm not from Mississippi, so like, it's only six of us that's not used to this lifestyle. So we really just kind of leaned on each other to get through it. You just end up. It was so boring. Like I remember we would just find stuff to do on campus, whether it was playing baseball with a broom and a soccer ball in the parking lot. Like the dorms was crazy. Like leaving from Florida State, I had my own place. I had two different apartments. And then we come in here, we had the dorms we had where I stayed at was called the slums. Like
What is
we
a
had the
slum?
slums. Yeah, it was just like, you know what I'm saying? If I never been to prison, but I feel like I know what it might feel like. Um, and two people used to share this like one bedroom and like one bathroom and a closet. And like I didn't even have enough space for my own stuff. So I had my own room. That was part of my deal.
Yeah.
But then, on campus they had another housing unit. We called that Beverly Hills because it was more space. It was a little nicer. Like, so it was just different coming from Florida
Mm-hmm.
State. Like we had not curfews, but couldn't have at that time couldn't have girls in your dorm at a certain time. Like that was a fine. It's a whole bunch of rules. It was like just very different
Mm-hmm.
from coming from Florida State. So Yeah, it was interesting, but it served its purpose, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's crazy about, just what I was thinking about the context period of time, 2015, Uber Eats, Uber is not what it
Mm-mm.
is now. So it's crazy to think that a McDonald's and a Walmart was that far away. 'Cause it's like, what do you
Mm-hmm.
do?
The
Um,
gas station, Subway it out.
that's insane. All right, so then you get there, John, I'm going to start with you. So you get there, and we see in season one that, I mean, there is a competition for the starting quarterback position, it seemed. And so you coming into MCC, were you under the impression that you would be competing for the quarterback job, especially since you had Trickett at FSU?
Um, I ain't think I was gonna be competing. It was kind of like you're gonna be our guy, but things kind of went left, I guess. I mean, I just like that's what they wanted to do, so that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, you keep me a little cute, but I'm not gonna let it go. Because I think it plays into how we saw you on screen, right?
Yeah.
So just competitor to competitor. You're leaving FSU to go FSU, where you were behind the Jameis Winston, right? You're not starting, maybe understandable. You transfer to JUCO. I mean, like, let's just be real. You transfer to JUCO, and you're competing for the number one spot. Like, I'd be upset. I'm like keep it professional, but like I would be upset. Like, were you upset? Like, because it's not
Oh yeah,
you didn't get the context on the screen of like, hey, this is our guy,
yeah. Man, I was furious. I just kind of felt played because I mean, to my defense, all right, so they filmed us for 6 months and they showed 6 hours, right? And I
Right.
always try to tell people this, like, they literally went on camera and said I was a Ferrari and the guy that I was competing with was a pickup truck.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I know what I would want to drive every day. You know what I'm saying? So that's not even me speaking, that's my coaches, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I mean that alone speaks a lot of volumes in my opinion. But like it in my opinion wasn't a close competition. I felt like it was a lot of other stuff behind it. But it's cool, you know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day I ended up being a number one JUCO rated quarterback that season, playing half a game
Right.
every game. So
Right.
I just say imagine what I can do with a whole game every for the whole season, you know.
Right. Right.
But I made the most of my opportunities, and that's just kind of what I try to tell kids now. Like you're not really in control of how much you're gonna play, when you're gonna play, but when you get your
Hmm.
opportunity, just make sure it count and it never fall back on you. So that's how I just kind of had to get through it at that point in time.
Right. Right. Because when you were on the field, you showed out. I mean, the scores were atrocious during
Yeah.
the season,
Yeah, like
so.
our first game, I don't think I ever scored as much as we did when we were in school. But like my first game, we beat a team 72-10.
Y'all
And
were putting up basketball numbers.
yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's how I like to play. I'm like, bro, like you get what you get. Like
yeah.
I don't believe in letting up. I don't believe in none of that. Like if we step on as long as it's in between the lines,
Hmm.
if you don't want to get blown out, then make a stop. It's simple.
Right, right. Okay, and then DeAndre, for you, we saw you in or mostly in season two, but you were on the roster in 2015 as a redshirt. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then when you got your opportunity, I mean, season two, the quarterback story wasn't that interesting because the numbers you were putting up were crazy. Like we just,
Yeah.
and you had no defense. I know these are your former teammates, so you ain't gotta say, but I'll say it. The defense was atrocious. Okay, the shootouts that y'all were having. But tell me about your experience at the quarterback position, and I guess that would have been the 2016 season.
Yeah, it was the 2016 season.
Mhm.
See, yeah, like you said, my approach was a little different. I was coming off Florida State, and a lot of people don't realize was that during our spring game, John Potatoes during our spring game, I produced a pretty explosive spring game for my debut in FSU, and it got to the point to where I was rated like my PFF was like the second highest debuted in like any FSU QB's like spring history besides Jameis Winston. And with that being said, right there, after the game, because the team that I was on, it was the first time in like a very long time to where the backups end up beating the starters that game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like, oh shit, okay, this kid got something. And I remember after the game, I remember sitting down in Coach Fisher's office, and he's like, hey man, we need to speed up your process. You know, you had a great performance, and we're gonna make you the guy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay. And I'm a freshman at the time. All right, bet. Okay, cool. So now you tell you gonna give me the ring. He's like, hey, I need you ready to go by Boston College. And that year, I think that was like the second game of the year. And like
Mm-hmm.
John says, like, hey, for the first game, we're gonna go with Sean. He's the old guy. And then but you're gonna play. Be ready to go. And so going from that process, man, of understand like, hey, I just got the job, from the defend the national championship team, and then fast forward now, I'm like, okay, I go to East Mississippi. Like I said, I want to go there, sit for a year, and maintain my eligibility. So there was never no instant, where I lacked confidence when I went into the room. Like, so I already known that I was going to end up taking over the QB position, and it was kind of different. Got there, and I was on, like you say, the first season, and I had a unique situation by me being on the roster but not
Right.
basically playing, which ultimately, like, caused me to miss out the first game of the next season when I actually took over. We had a big brawl the first season,
Mm-hmm.
and and that kind of, well, not kind of, but it definitely did, like, halted our season, to where now we lost the first game. And then now, at this level in JUCO, if you lose one game, it's hard to get to the national championship.
Right.
So that right there, it kind of like, like you say, man, it kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
put our season in the back burners. It didn't matter how many touchdowns I threw. It don't matter, if I was the highest rated QB and I was MVP, stuff like that. It didn't matter, man, because, when it mattered most, they suspended me because of, being involved in the game, during the first season.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get into the brawl a little bit later, but just kind of fast forwarding through all that. So John does his 6 months at MCC, gets up out of there.
Hmm.
DeAndre put in some real time. The show comes out.
Yeah.
You guys seemingly ride off into the sunset, right? We see y'all on the show. And now it's 2025, and y'all drop this massive lawsuit. So, DeAndre, I'm starting with you. How did we get here? So, walk me through like watching the show and your thoughts and feelings and how we got to a $30 million $30 million lawsuit against Netflix, your old school. I mean, everybody. How we get here?
Yeah. I just think that it was something that was gonna, happen inevitably. It just happens, to where it got to the point where, we just having a conversation one day and seeing what's going on, and we're like, man, how's everything? How are you feeling? How are you mentally and whatnot? And everybody's, talking about different transgressions that's been going on in life, and you're like, yeah. And then you start seeing a lot more buzz going on, right? A lot of people. Well, let me backtrack. It goes back to it. Let's say you were going to a school, right? Like say you first went to East Mississippi, right? And it got to the point where we first got there. No, for me, it was teachers and people saying, hey, we don't really want this kid around. You know, and then it got to the point, you'd be out in public and everybody asking you, hey man, how much did you get from the show? Or this, that. And it's like, what? So everybody just kind of thought that, that, you made a profit off it, right? That you was basically like acting or stuff like that. And it's like, no, man, that was real life.
Mhm.
That's real events that happened. And and just talking to my former teammates and whatnot, man, everybody has similar stories, man. And it was just like, And then, seeing what's going on, what's been happening, in this whole new landscape with how they're structuring college football, whatnot. It's like, man, pretty much, in other words, man, we kind of was a trailblazer, when it came to like this landscape, when it comes to like, college football, where it is now. And, and we kind of, was left out.
Mhm.
And so it's like, it's just personal matters, man, that kind of like, led up into it. So,
Right. And I want to highlight something for those that aren't in the trenches of the college sports world like us about what was going on at the time. So it's 2015. NIL legislation or name, image, and likeness is not a thing. So you
right,
players can't earn money off of their name, image, and likeness. It's super restrictive. I know I had some friends in college that were athletes. They couldn't even have their own clothing line. Like they would
right,
hand make their own clothes. They couldn't sing or they couldn't sell it. I knew people who were singers. They couldn't earn any money off of their performance. So none of that is possible at the time that y'all are landing it in MCC. So at the
right,
time, um, just kind of that context of like, hey, no, you're not getting any money from that. And I also want to make sure we highlight for everybody that the NCAA rules are not the law. So the NCAA still does have to abide by state and federal law. The NCAA is a voluntary membership organization where all the participating schools agree to adhere by NCAA laws, but the rules can't violate the law. So I guess using that as a segue, Andrew, coming your way, want to kind of get into the nuts and bolts uh, legally about what's going on in this lawsuit. So you're the lead attorney from John Pierce Law. And so this lawsuit was just filed in February of 2025. And can you walk us through the legal claims of the suit?
Yeah, sure. So, I think the lawsuit itself stems in two branches before I go into the six individual causes of action. When I initially had a conversation with John Franklin, um, him and I were discussing the NCAA lawsuit that was consolidated. So, for those that don't know, the NCAA lawsuit, it's referred to as the House argument, the House cause of action. It was three antitrust matters that were consolidated into one. The court ruled, and there was a settlement that was agreed upon for $3 billion. So I see a lot of people saying that John Franklin, DeAndre, and the other plaintiffs won't be entitled to compensation because at the time they played in the NJCAA, NIL was not a thing, right? Like as you just mentioned, players could not get paid for their performance, name, image, or likeness, so on and so forth. So just breaking down our complaint, there's six causes of action. You have misappropriation and violation of California statute. We talk about common law right of publicity, false light, which is basically the manipulation of character as you're portrayed on film, unjust enrichment, conveying a benefit onto someone and not receiving any benefit in return, and unfair business practices, which is in violation of California statute. And the sixth cause of action is defamation, similar to the false light. It's a false statement of fact published to a third party. So, as I previously mentioned, it really does stem in two directions. You have that unjust enrichment, unjust benefit that's conferred onto each defendant, where none of the plaintiffs ever received a penny, a dollar, a dime for their participation in the show. And what people don't realize is it is so inequitable, so unjust that these massive corporations such as Condé Nast and Netflix who are reporting billions and billions of dollars in revenue, all they're doing is pressing play on a video camera, cutting, editing, and pasting, right? But without each of the plaintiffs being filmed, they're not making any money. So you're taking film off of players that we represent and you're making billions of dollars, yet they don't get anything. And without them, you're not making a single penny. So that inequitable level is, it's a legal cause of action that needs to be brought to the court's attention. The latter branch of the lawsuit itself is that name, image, likeness, similar to the NCAA, where at the time they were playing, you weren't allowed to get paid for your performance, for your name, image, and likeness. However, like the NCAA, that court found it unconscionable to force these players to, either say, I'm going to forfeit every form of compensation that I can get, even though everyone around me will benefit from my name, image, likeness. I need to play, so I'm going to sign this contract. So that second branch goes to that, and that's where the California business practices comes in. That's that unconscionability, that
Mhm.
massive unfairness in bargaining power that Netflix, Condé Nast, these massive corporations have over these players. And again, like the NJCAA, they're saying, you're getting these young kids that all they're thinking about is making to the NFL. Of course, if you shove a piece of paper in their face, they're going to sign something. They're not thinking about the business opportunity, the commercial value. All they want to do is play the sport of football, and all they want to do is make it to the NFL.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's really interesting because when I first was reading about you all's lawsuit and particularly the misappropriation claims, at first glance, I was just like, I mean, they're student athletes. They can't be compensated at the time because of the NIL rules. But then I did remember, I mean, most folks, college athletes, etc., huge fans of what is it, the like college football video game, college basketball video games that we had and then we didn't have anymore for a long time and now they're coming back. It's because of litigation. It's because athletes' name, image, and likeness were being used in video games. This is the Ed O'Bannon and NCAA case. The athletes' name, image, and likeness were being used in video games. The athletes didn't receive any compensation. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that that case, there was a decision in part, but the relevant part on this issue was actually settled. So we never actually found out, and this was all back in 2009, whether or not a court would have actually said, no, like student athletes are entitled to their name, image, and likeness. There was other litigation about, student athletes can't unionize for all of these other reasons. But even back in 2015, this wouldn't have been established law. And to my recollection, as a sports junkie, I don't recall there being any other documentaries about a college team that was active. Maybe former programs. I know the SMU lost death penalty case and all the 30 for 30 documentaries, but there was no reality TV or docuseries about current student athletes at the time. Um,
Right.
so,
So
and yeah, so Andrew, can you provide a little bit more context too? Because I want to walk through each of these claims. So, really starting with the misappropriation claim, because on Chanel's Court, I like to break it down for my folks. So, can you break down the elements in lay terms? And then, guys, we'll loop into you guys about the facts supporting this claim.
Sure. So, misappropriation and the right of publicity are very, very similar. So, those are the first two causes of action that you're going to see. So, it's the unconsented for the usage of someone else's name, image, and or likeness without the authorization or the right to use that name, image, and likeness. Um, this is where you're going to see us, putting forth those claims of unconscionability in the contracts themselves, right? So, when you look at, both the common law or UCC or statutory language, courts have recognized time and time again the unconscionability doctrine, that they can find an entire agreement, such as a media release or just specific terms, to be unenforceable, just based on the inequity in bargaining power. When you have a take it or leave it contract, such as the NJCAA or the NCAA pushes in front of these kids, that's where courts will step in, like they did in the NCAA case, saying this is unfair to the consumer, the player, whoever it may be, because they have little choice but to accept the terms because the drafter of that contract, such as the NJCAA, the NCAA, East Mississippi, whoever it may be, has a monopoly in that position, in that market. And each competitor, like Condé Nast, Netflix, whoever they may be, uses the same clause. And the players, the individual players, have no say.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're doing now is East Mississippi Community College. They're selling, thousands of Franklin jerseys, thousands of DeAndre Johnson jerseys, and they're not seeing any of the value from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you're kind of getting to the first two causes of action, that unconscionability of, sign this or else you can't play football and you can't make it to the next level.
Right, right. I mean, essentially here we're y'all are looking for the residuals. All right. Where are the residuals? Y'all didn't get paid at the time. So coming into the misappropriation claim, I want to talk about, and one of the biggest questions that I've been asked, or, my friends wanted to know from you all, is what was your understanding about the show or what your likeness was going to be used for? I know in the lawsuit it does mention that you all were signed releases, or you guys signed releases. Talk me through that, how you were presented those, what they said.
Uh, well, from what I can remember, like I said, so I was leaving Florida State like a week or two before training camp anywhere. So I'm on the tail end. So I'm really just I put in my transfer and I'm, what I'm saying, going around trying to figure it out. But I just, the situation made it so bleed. They ain't mentioned nothing about a show. I wasn't going there to be on a show. I was going there because that was the least amount of time I could get back to Division One.
Mhm.
So I did made that decision, and when I get there, it's like people following me to class all day, every day. I'm like, all right, like then they just basically like I seen them do everybody. They just make you sign a piece of paper and say they so you could show your face. That's all that piece of paper that I remember signing. They were saying you gotta sign this so you can show their face. That was everybody that basically had their face shown on camera, whether that was accidentally or if they were in a scene in the background. I mean, it was a bunch of students that had to sign stuff just because they would go around asking and interviewing the students in the school. So that was the only thing there, and there was no here, take this over, read about it. Like we all had a team meeting. They told us that we got to sign these papers, leave them in the back. Like we used to have all our recruitment mail in the back, stuff like that. So all the important stuff would go in the back of the meeting room. So you sign it, leave it there on your way out. And it was kind of like if you don't do it, it's gonna be punishment or repercussions type thing.
Mhm. And these papers that you're signing, was it like a sheet or like a stack of papers? Like,
No, it was like a sheet. And like I said, we was just told like this was so our face won't be blurred. I'm like,
right.
all right, cool. I mean, you gonna be following me anyways. Might as well get my face.
Right. And like, I guess
Yeah.
again, providing context, I was a student athlete as well. Um, and I remember when I was first recruited, or actually when I first got to school, I had to sign some type of release so that my photo would be able to be shown on the university website.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't in no documentary, nobody followed me around. And so at the time, like, did it seem like it was an important piece of paper? Were there any mentions of attorneys, age? Well, actually, you couldn't even have an agent at that time. But were there any mentions of talk to your parents about it, talk to somebody about it before you sign?
No,
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah.
Dre,
So,
know it.
so yeah, but say to my recollection, it wasn't nothing like that. Like John said, it was a sheet of paper, probably about maybe halfway full. It wasn't even like it wasn't a full sheet of paper, and it was just basically, hey man, like I said, when I got there, it was like you know, welcome to school, but whatnot. The next day, now you see guys walking around with cameras, like what's going on here? Oh yeah, we shooting a documentary. Okay, cool. And then it's just like, oh, and then these papers right here in the back. Hey, you guys sign them. So before you hit the field, you gotta sign them. And if you don't sign them, then you guys can't practice because it's gonna interfere with what we're trying to do. So it's
Gotcha.
like, okay. Yeah. So then it's just like, it was nothing like, okay, look over this, look over that. It was just based like I remember you say, like, me and John both came from a Division I program. So we knew, okay, when you go to a school, the school is supposed to protect you and look after you, right? So like you say, so we like, okay, cool, like in compliance. Like you say, you gotta sign a release so the school can use your image, right? So we think it's just exactly the same thing. And
Mhm.
so yeah, it was nothing else about that.
Mhm. And were you all like threatened with punishment of like, hey, you can't play, or um, you can't participate in team activities if you didn't sign the paper?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember some guys would run onto the field, and I remember a coach vividly saying, "Hey, no, 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 go up there, go sign that paper, then come back out here."
Hmm. Hmm.
So
And I think that's kind of the biggest thing after hearing you guys' story that speaks to the unfair bargaining power that you were also mentioning, Andrew, of like, not only could you not negotiate contract terms, it's like, hey, we're going to take away this opportunity for you to get back to the next level, even though you're here in the first place to try to reach that goal just because we need your face to be featured in this documentary is crazy.
Right. I mean, when you look up the definition of unconscionability and the restatements or whatever it is, you're going to see that there's that absence of meaningful choice on part of one of the parties to the contract itself. And when it's combined with the contractual terms, they're unreasonably favorable to one of the parties, which is exactly the situation you have here. Like DeAndre just said, you have guys running onto the field ready to practice in full gear and being told, no, 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 you can't run out here. Go sign that piece of paper and then run out to the field. You're not thinking about legal terms, you're not thinking about commercial value, anything of that nature.
Mhm.
These guys were being told, review this with an attorney, here's what the terms of the agreement means. It's either sign this or you can't practice today. So of course they're going to
Right.
sign. All they have on their mind is performing as well as they can that day on the field to like play their best that weekend and then get scouted and move on to the next level. So
Mhm.
that's that absence of meaningful choice. It's either sign this or don't play. Of course they're going to sign the contract. They have or agreement or media release, whatever that may be. They have no choice but to sign that.
Mhm. And so, DeAndre, what would you say to people though that may ask, like, okay, well, if you were really that against it, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just transfer? Like, you're supposed to be so good. Why didn't you just find a different program to play
yeah,
for?
I would say my argument to that was that it's not like today. There was never no transfer portals. There was none of that going on. It was back then. If you go to a school, that's your school, and then if you decide to transfer, you have to sit out a whole year before you can even like touch the field, right?
Right.
And then a lot of people don't realize, especially at that level, because John was unique. He had got his AA when he left Florida State. I was still pretty much in my undergraduate, so I had to complete 60 plus hours, right? So when you drop down, even if you're a qualifier, if you drop down, there's still a certain amount of credit hours that you have to even transfer out of there, right? With giving a 2.5 GPA on top of that. So it was just a lot of little preliminary that people don't really know about. And and like I would just say, for like I say, for instance, like I came there for one to get an education, and I came there to play football. And I didn't come there, to be exploited or for people to say, hey, why did you do this, do that? I came there, so I get an education and continue playing my, try to get to a professional career.
Mhm.
And it just so happened that's what came along with it, during
Yeah.
a time where, it wasn't really proactive when it came to, transferring, moving around, stuff like that.
Right. And one thing I also was thinking of as you were mentioning academics, Andrew, I mean, when I was watching, now that I'm not a college student, I'm like, are they allowed to talk about their grades on a national, well, really international TV? Like we're hearing about GPAs and class issues. Like, how is that not against the law?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean you're literally discussing things that are a massive intrusion onto someone's private life. These aren't areas like John Franklin wore a white sweatshirt on Wednesday. These are areas where, grades are private, and to even access someone's grades like a medical record, you need authentication, you need a password, you need parental supervision, whatever it may be, if you're a minor, to access those grades. Why? Because they're so private in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would release John's, full transcript with all of his grades to the public. It's
Hmm.
private information to see how well he's doing academically. If someone has learning disabilities, you're not going to release his grades to the public. That's a massive intrusion on someone's private life.
Right, right. And I know that was a lot of the conversation, kind of as a segue into the invasion of privacy and portrayal of plaintiffs in a false light claim. The academics issue was a huge part of Ronald Ollie's story on the show. I mean, I would think in today's time he could probably have his own pen and notebook line or something like that. But unfortunately, 2015 couldn't capitalize on the opportunity at that time. But in terms of the false light claim for you, John, per the lawsuit, you were taking issue with being portrayed as arrogant and as a brat. Can you talk to me more about your claims?
Yeah, well, I already kind of knew something was up. Before the show was about to be premiered, I was told from Greg Whiteley, who's the director, that don't be caught off guard by how you may come across on screen. And at that point in time, like, why would somebody tell me that? You know what I'm saying? Like, he
Mm-hmm.
told me it's still, you have to remember at the end of the day, it's still entertainment that we're selling. So that already kind of gave me a insight of like, okay, whatever it is they're putting, they mind you, they filmed us for 6 months and they made a 6 hour series about it. So
Mm-hmm.
could you imagine what was cut, what was edited? And there's no script. This is just all real life. So it could all be cut into a way, for their benefit, for entertainment. So I was already warned. Cool. But why you were warning me? That was already a red flag. And then I've even, even in my professional career, I've had my own position coaches come up to me and be like, man, like I thought you was gonna be hard to deal with. Thought you was gonna be like prima donna, a problem kid. You're like one of the most respectful young men. You articulate yourself very well. You're a hard worker. You do things the right way. And it's just like you only know that because you probably watched a 6 hour documentary and think you know me.
Right.
So just imagine every time I'm walking into a room, I'm already fighting an uphill battle. What I'm saying? To the point where now I welcome anybody the chance to come talk to me because like I guarantee you what you thought about me, you're gonna think the exact opposite about it. Just give me like a few minutes. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And so that's something I always had to deal with. And the perception is everything. Putting that out there and it did we know that it was going to be still here 10 years ago? No, had no idea, but it is. So imagine the amount of people. I mean, just in that one year, it was over like, what I'm saying 1 billion people watched it, and not
Mm-hmm.
just in the US. We talking about globally. So now everybody, like people that could affect my future, might have a certain perception of me based off of 6 hours that y'all decided was good for y'all television show, but not necessarily good for John Franklin III's career and his brand. So like that's just the facts. Like, and do I care how people perceive me? Absolutely not. If I would, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And being an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
if especially at the highest level, if you're not confident within yourself, you probably won't be, you probably don't deserve, wouldn't make it to where the level you are. You know what I'm saying? I feel like people think I'm arrogant because I called my shot and I did what I say I was gonna do every time on camera.
Right.
From the first episode to the last, and I'm able to do that because I believe in myself. I put in the work to do that. So yeah, I'm gonna call my shot because I know it, if given the opportunity, what I'm gonna do with it because
Mm-hmm.
I prepare for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. But it's just for me, it's just I don't call it arrogant. I call it confidence. And if you're not confident in yourself, then why should anybody else believe in you? I always felt like that. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like I'm good enough, why should I think anybody else should think that of me? So, you know. They
Yeah.
can call it what it is, but it still doesn't change the fact of what it could have changed for my career. Who's to say that Jerry Jones hasn't watched Last Chance U and didn't want to draft me because he thought I was like a prima donna or is going to be a problem child? Who's Nobody can say. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the problem is they weren't like these are things that Ali has to deal with now. Isaiah has to deal with now. Like I'm 30 years old with a child and I still have to go in every room and fight that battle no matter what. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So that's just the real life that's the real that we have to deal with. Not saying that I'm grateful that it doesn't come with any positives, any perks, but at the end of the day, like the facts is the facts.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, were you going to say something?
No, no, no. I
Mm-hmm.
was going to say, yeah, and th those conversations did happen. John, a lot of people say, John made it to the NFL, so, he obviously wasn't damaged by his image on screen. But, there's still that, missed opportunity, that uphill battle that John is facing, that he did face back then, even on his route to the NFL, because of the portrayal of his character in that show, right? So when you talk about false light, it's the misleading or false portrayal of another's character. And that's exactly what happened with John. So even when John was making it to the NFL, pursuing the NFL, those conversations were being had by multiple NFL teams,
Mhm.
multiple college teams that saw the documentary, that a lot of them passed up on the chance to even go after John because they thought he was that, brat, arrogant, lazy individual, disrespectful individual. And I've spoken to his teammates, I've spoken to past coaches of his. Everyone has refuted and rebutted all of those assumptions.
Right.
Everyone said how respectful he is, hardworking he is, what a good teammate he is. So that's why we pled that cause of action on his behalf, because
Mhm.
we've spoken to his coaches, we've spoken to his teammates, his teachers, individuals around him, colleagues. Nobody that actually knew him would use those terms to describe him. Nobody has said he's lazy, disrespectful, arrogant, so on and so forth. But he's a good teammate. He's a good father. He's a good man. He's a good friend, so on and so forth.
And so, John, when I'm assuming you watched the show, um, what do you think? Is there anything that you can recall that we missed from the show, right? That would have shown you in the correct light?
I've only watched the show twice. I
Mhm.
watched it when it first came out. I watched it back to back. I never watched it again. Um, I mean, like I said, 6 months to 6 hours is just a lot of shit y'all
Yeah,
missed.
yeah.
To sit here and just, think about one thing, I really can't. But
I guess like who are you? Like what do you wish would have been shown about who you are and your character?
um, honestly, I don't really. If everything I did was just raw, natural, like me. And I feel like that's why a lot of people connect with me as well, because it was very authentic the way it came off, because it was very real in the moment. I mean, I remember in JUCO, I was ready to, what people don't know is at that point in time, that's when I was ready to quit football and just walk away from it.
Mhm.
That's where like my relationship with God was really created on my own. That's the hardest time in my life I kind of went through up until that point. And it was, you know, because everything that was going on, and then I made a decision in that moment to, you know, not give up on myself, really.
Mhm.
And now when I sit back and think about it, I'm like, man, this show's been on TV for 10 years. The amount of people that have seen it, like, I'm just proud of the message that I gave,
Mhm.
to never say no, what I'm saying? I feel like we all have the power to make our dreams come true. You just have to have an undeniable and relentless spirit to go after it. But in the deep inside me, like, I was ready to quit. And I just imagine, and if I did what I really wanted to do, the message that I'd be sending out to all of the millions of people that's been able to watch it, it'll be hard to live with.
Mhm.
So even though all the, false light and all that stuff, that's the part that I hate about it. Like, I'm proud of the message that did get across and that people do see the real, because although it was a
Right.
football story, like, I feel like our journey, our stories was life stories.
Yeah.
Um, Adversity, overcoming adversity, um, being out on your own at your lowest moment, nobody around you, no family. You hit those hard times, you're gonna go left and quit. You're gonna go right and make it happen. That's
Mhm.
all you got. So, yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about the situation.
Yeah, no, and I was also thinking about I've been watching Coach Prime's show on Amazon Prime, and I mean the man talks a mess, right? So I recognize him as just another dog, but the way
Hmm.
that they have shown him has it is very positive, honestly. Just
Hmm.
very, it's more of that competitive aspect. I mean, a lot of people say that Kobe was a jerk, right? But that competitive edge was highlighted, and we really didn't see that from you. Like, it wasn't shown. Like, I mean, I wouldn't know. Do you do extra reps? Do you stay late? Do you hype people up? I know in DeAndre's season, I mean, we just saw a lot of encouragement of him on the sideline, just a very vocal, positive leader, which they didn't show enough of that, frankly. But that really wasn't part of your story. Your story was this kid is butthurt because he came from SEC and he thought he was being the starter, and this guy with the nice long hair is showing out, and John can't handle it. It was kind of the vibe of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. I mean, DeAndre could attest to it. Like, I kind of showed everybody how to really put in work once I
Mhm.
got there. I mean, mind you, you know what I'm saying? Like these guys haven't yet been able to see the things or experience. At this point in time, I've been a part of the national championship team. So I'm walking in there, everybody like, bro, like, what's good? Like, how we do this? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I'm the one leading practices before we got 7-on-7, you know what I'm saying? Just putting things together, showing dudes how to really put in work when nobody else watching. You know what I'm saying? It's not shown. And I mean, what people, real workers like Kobe, like the greats, they don't need to be shown. You know, what's done, you show it on the game day. That's why
Right.
you able to go out there and
The
talk the way
work.
you able to talk because you done did the work when nobody's watching. So, I mean, like I said, I don't really care how they portray me or don't, I mean, they missed a lot, but those who know me know I ain't get to where I got to and been able to accomplish the things I've been able to accomplish, one without God, but one without me doing the work, because that was my hobby, was just putting in work. And then being in scuba, because it was nothing to do, it just amplified it to a whole other
Right.
level.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so the next claim in the lawsuit is the unjust enrichment claim. And Andrew, I want to talk to you about that and clarify for some of our viewers about why some of the parties are included. So I think a lot of people probably can think it makes sense, why the players are saying or why Netflix is included in this claim, but talk about the unjust enrichment in terms of MCC and the NJCAA.
A lot of letters. So for those that don't know, without a express writing, without a formalized contract, you can still recover. If I say to you, Chanel, do you want to buy a candy bar for $1? You say yes, and you take the candy bar and you never pay me, I can still recover from you, even though we didn't sign a contract with the terms of that agreement, right? So you have a quasi contract. It is a contract, even though there was no writing saying, John or DeAndre, I'm going to film you guys. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, this and that, right? So quasi contracts are found all the time by courts, even without, express intent to form that valid contract, to form that formalized writing. It's just a matter of fairness. That's why at common law, you had these quantum merit, these unjust enrichment claims, because you would go to the court without statutes and you would just say, court, I gave Chanel a benefit. She never paid me back for that benefit. Please make her pay me. And the court would say, okay, you painted Chanel's fence. She has to pay you $20 for that, right? Similarly, when you discuss the other named defendants in the matter, when you talk about the NJCAA in East Mississippi, in the lawsuit itself, we talk a little bit about the NJCAA. Before the documentary, I would say millions of people didn't even know JUCO existed, didn't even know the talent in JUCO,
Hmm.
right? When you look at the revenue report, and again, this is the only public revenue report we could obtain, and I guarantee there's a lot more out there that will attest to the amount of wealth and the benefit that the show and these players brought to them, right? So without their notoriety, without their name, image, and likeness that was portrayed on camera, the NJCAA wouldn't have had that upshot in revenue. So
Hmm.
that's why, these players are giving a benefit to the league. The league is selling tickets, they're drawing attraction, they have fans coming in, they have more players trying out for schools that play in JUCO because of guys like DeAndre, because of guys like John Franklin, because of
Hmm.
guys like Isaiah Wright and the other named plaintiffs in the matter.
Hmm.
And then, East Mississippi Community College themselves, again, while the guys were at the school or even thereafter, they were never paid for their performance and the name, image, and likeness. The school is selling merchandise with Franklin on the back, with Johnson on the back, with Wright on the back, with Ollie on the back, and these guys are not getting paid for it. But without them, the school's not making that revenue. They're not generating that merchandise profit without all of their performances, without all their name,
Right.
image, and likeness. So they're conferring that benefit throughout their hard work and their performance in the field, but they're not receiving any compensation in return for that.
Right. And what would you say though to people from a legal standpoint? And guys, I'll get your take on it because I'm sure you have something to say about this. But what would you say to folks from a legal standpoint who say, okay, yeah, they didn't get paid, but they got an education, people know who they are, they got notoriety. I'm sure they got other opportunities because they were featured on the show. Like, how relevant is that when we're claiming, hey, well, we didn't get anything out of it?
Yeah, so I think there's, I see that a lot, and I think there's a counter argument, right? So again, you look at it, an education. A lot of people will argue that an education should be promised. European countries, you don't even have to pay for college educations, right?
Mhm.
You take a massive corporation like Netflix or Condé Nast that already have $1 billion in revenue, and now they make $1 billion more dollars. But what you're going to say that it's fair and equitable to give my guys a free education? That's crazy to me. I think European countries would look at our system and say that's insane to be paying $70,000 at a university for 1 year of education.
Mhm.
So, and that other thing where people are saying, at least their faces were shown, they got publicity. You take a guy like John Franklin, and he's being shown, and the producer of the show calls him and says, "Hey, relax. You might not be seen in a great way." Clearly he knew how he was going to be portrayed. Clearly he produced the show. He knew how it was being cut and edited. And now he's shown in a way that's not even him, in a
Right.
disrespectful manner, in a way that is horrible to his character and hurts his person and his reputation.
Right. And DeAndre, would you say, do you think your life drastically improved because you were on the show? Like, do you see on your day to day, like, yeah, like I was in that Netflix show 10 years ago and it's still paying me dividends? Is that your perspective about the show?
None, not at all, not at all.
So talk to me about your, like, what's been going on in the past 10 years. Like, I guess I want to know, like, are you just a regular guy?
Yeah, so like you say, like, during the filming of the show, like some of us we came in, during a very low time of our life, right? And so, usually when you see like docu-series like or documentaries, it's like the dream team 10, 20 years after. Like I said earlier, ours was during the moment. So we was able to get filmed and then to get released, and then we're still living our life day to day the year afterwards, right? So I vividly remember, being on campus and like I said, pre-NIL and people treating us like we're Travis Hunter and everything going on campus, stopping you, taking pictures, wanting autographs, stuff like that.
Right.
And just saying, hey man, did you help me out, or how much you got paid this, or happy for you, this or that. But at the same time, like I said, I was going through something where it was at the very it was at the very lowest point in my life that I had to go through, and it was nationally televised, right?
Mhm.
To the point to where like afterwards, like you say, man, we would have to turn down certain invitations or certain things, like say we wanted to go, and like reap some of the benefits that came off being around the show, but based off it being quote unquote illegal based off the NCAA and NJCAA, that affected our life, right? So like I said, we couldn't really capitalize on our name, image, and likeness, or just, the thought of, people knowing who we were, right? Where we kind of had this, like, okay, that's what happened. When we went to our universities, they parade you around, right? They take you to all like the donor meetings. They take you to the booster clubs. You go out there, you talk in front of the university, stuff like that, and they saying such and such from this, that, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. So this how everybody see you, right? And fast forward, now what I'm doing now, I still play professionally for X amount of years. But now I'm coaching, and I'm actually coaching at the college level. So now I'm seeing it, from a college coach rather than a college player, right? And you
Mhm.
go back and you look back, you're like, wow, man, you know what? Man, looking at myself 10 years ago, it's like, dang, man, I wish I'd have known, you know, this, around this time, right? And you're like, man, wow, you start having some questions like, man, was that really right? And it's, and then you start having a little bit of PTSD and stuff like that, right? Like other night, Tuesday, actually, I'm in study hall with some of my kids, and we're in study hall, and then out of nowhere, I start hearing, a voice. I'm like, man, that voice sounds kind of familiar. And it's my voice. And kids, they huddled up and they watching the show, right? So they reliving it and they're asking a million questions and whatnot, right? And so they want to know everything, the if, ends, the buts, the ins and out of it. And for them, like this is a new world for them because now they get paid to college. We had a guy at this level that got offered 500K, just to go sign to a D1.
Right.
Looking at, when we was in school and the guys we played was like, wow, man, if we was playing, we would have got X, X amount or whatnot, right? So it's just like, man, everything happens for a reason. But, I think it's a full circle moment for me, now being on, the coach's side, and I'm seeing, how protective I am of my kids, right? And and just you want to make sure that you put them in the right situation and protect them on and off the field. And I
Right.
think a lot of that came back from trial and error when it comes to and your success, in your playing days, right? And seeing how certain coaches, was able to use you, and then the other coaches, like I say, use you for what you got. Then once you done, now they act like they don't know you and stuff like that. And you never want to have that approach, with your guys. So that was kind of like what brought me back, to wanting to get into coaching, because seeing so many coaches, man, that just not really do right by you, you
Right.
know. So yeah, that's where I'm at now, coaching college football, and and trying to provide an impact, and be a change agent, and just be of service, to guys, that's trying to get on the right path, and being able to live out their dreams, and get education, be a better man, be a better son, better father. I just had one kid. He just became a father last week, so it's kind of yeah, it's kind of crazy for me, and but yeah, man, it's definitely rewarding for me.
It sounds like
And
you're getting old. You know that that's
I
what
know, right? I'm
that's what
raising
that
kids and
means.
everything now.
That- Once you start seeing the
So
circle of life, it means you're getting
I
old.
know, I know, right? So that's kind of like my take on it now, man. We just like I say, a traumatic point of life, man, that really was denied a lot of things that should have been granted to me. So.
Yeah, yeah. And so for you, John, like I don't expect you to admit to being a regular guy. I would be like, you're gonna be like, I ain't regular. Eh, but what do you have to say to people that may think that y'all are just looking for a come up right now? I mean, it's been 10 years, and what would you say to people that are like, hey, you just didn't really like how your life shook out, and that's why we're here today?
I mean, through it all, I loved how my life shook out. I mean, I got
Hmm.
to live my dream that I wanted to live since I was 4 years old, playing in the NFL. I'm vested. My family's taken care of. I'm sitting in a nice house. I mean, I'm blessed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm in real estate. I have rental properties. For I'm not hurting for money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think any of us are hurting for money. And especially, where I'm from, you know what I'm saying? I'm just a hustler. I know how to capitalize on off of opportunities. That's how I got to where I am today. It's
Hmm.
just capitalizing on the opportunities I was given from playing. If I get to get on the game maybe 5 times, I'm gonna make sure I score two or three. I might not get
Hmm.
to touch the ball again, but I need to make sure I do what I need to do to advance.
Yeah.
So that's just always been my mentality. And after realizing what's going on, like, man, these schools and companies, they'll bleed you dry. They'll use you and squeeze everything out of you. So it's only right that you get your worth because they're gonna make sure they get theirs. Everybody trying to talk about, oh, you got a free education. Education is one of the biggest scams that we got in America, in my opinion. Like, how do you make me pay so much to go to school to get a degree because I need that degree to work, but as soon as I get a job, all my money is going back to paying for the education. Like, make it make
Hmm.
sense. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So, yeah, free education, but I'm spending more time working out, playing football, going to meetings than I ever do in any class that I take. So, what is more important? Am I here to play
Right.
football or am I here to go to school? You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So that's cap. And just in general, I mean, I'm good. Like, it's not no money grab. It's just I mean, if somebody literally, I mean, I get. I mean, if you want to be famous, cool. I'm not the type of person really to want fame. I'm a very low key guy. I don't really even talk a lot like that. I'm really just like I'm a homebody. I don't go out. I'm not a strip club dude, not a club dude. Like I just be kicking it for real. And you know, people want to know why now because there was an opportunity for us any time before we would have been
Hmm.
made this move. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like this is something brand new. So if I know for 10 years, I'm just sitting here like everybody assuming that we got paid, everybody thinking, what it is. It's like I'm at least trying to go get what I know is rightfully mine. I know they taken care of. I know the producers and the people that whatever did with Netflix, I know they sitting good. So me and my son and my wife supposed to just be cool with it, like, and I know I'm entitled to some, and it
Mhm.
could be something that could even be more life changing, even if I'm
Right,
not in a position, even if I'm not in that position where it's a need. Why
right,
wouldn't I? You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like everybody capping, and the way I just say it, they just people are just mad because they're not in a position to be able to do that. Like,
Mhm.
but if you're in our shoes and you see you are a minor, number one. People that made a fortune off of you and are able to take care of their families. We spend the block 10 years. I'm a 30-year-old man now. Like I was 20 years old on that show.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I have, you know what I'm saying, grown and became wiser and mature. Like, so I
Right.
know right from right and wrong from wrong. So we got grown men. You my fam, like you're still making other shows based off of my weakest moment. So
Mm.
yeah, I need to get a piece of that. And if it wasn't a good ass show, it wouldn't be on for 10 years. How many shows done been taken off of Netflix already? You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But we talking 10 years, I'm still getting hit up by people just watching it for the first time, thinking
I
I'm
just
still in that
watched it
moment.
again. I just
I'm
watched
like, fam, like
it
that was 10
again.
years ago. Like y'all talking about something that's way, way behind, but it's still being watched today for the first time by a lot of people. So you ask yourself, why is that? And like to not have no say so and not be able to be compensated for your life story.
Mhm.
People
That you
that
didn't
talking
even
up,
sign up to
yeah,
tell in
like
the first place.
so it's like people that you know what I'm saying like you know what I'm saying all of that is like, bro, you're delusional. If you were in this position, you wouldn't think you had an opportunity to get life-changing money for you and your family. You wouldn't take advantage of that opportunity. You're capping.
And so
Point
then,
blank period.
Andrew, so from a legal perspective, how, I mean, this lawsuit was just filed last month, February 2025. For our viewers who are wondering, how are we able still, or how are we able to file this lawsuit 10 years later? Are there any statute of limitations concerns or anything like that?
Yeah, so no statute of limitations concerns as the show is still being played on Netflix to date.
I
Like
see.
John is being said, you can go on right now if you click on Netflix and watch the show currently. So
Mhm.
you can see John and DeAndre right now if you please. So there's really no statute of limitations in that regards. You know, if the show had been taking off 10 years ago, we could get into that, you know, conversation if it still is applicable or things of that nature. From now, because the show's still running and each defendant is still profiting from the show and from
Right.
named plaintiff, there's no statute of limitations
Mhm.
concerns.
Yeah. And are you guys aware if MCC is still profiting from, in, I guess, in a concrete way from the show, meaning like jersey shit sales? I'm sure they're able to talk about it, but are there any concrete things that y'all are aware of they're still doing?
So yeah, so I want to be clear also that the 30 million we pled in damages was based on relevant findings we found in the court where we filed the action in California. However, there are a lot of revenue reports that are not public knowledge from each of the defendants, so we don't have concrete numbers on the actual show itself from Netflix or things of that nature. Once those come out in discovery, that 30 million amount is subject to change. Um, East Mississippi itself has gained a ton of money since the release of that show and DeAndre coaching in the NJCAA. I think you can speak a little bit on that behalf about how, you
Yeah.
know, you, John, the other plaintiffs have benefited them in such a way.
Yeah, no, definitely. Some from back in our playing days, like John was saying, I remember going out to the game and then you got people taking pictures. Hey man, I just came in from Germany. Hey, I just flew in from Poland just to come watch you guys play from watching.
Wow.
And you're like, wow, you flew away from Poland to Scuba, Mississippi, where the population is 711 people and about 500 goes to the community college to come see us. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And then, like you said, you look, they got your jersey number one. They go in the bookstore, you see them picking up different little merchandise, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So it was crazy times, right? And so, like I said, fast forward now to where I'm at now in the same conference. Now I'm on a coaching side, and so now, not playing against my alma mater, but I'm coaching against them, right? So now
Right.
you see the difference when it comes to the budget and the game plan and just recruiting, because now I'm in this, now I'm recruiting against them, right?
Right.
You're trying to coach against them. You see the different budgets. You see, they're the first school in JUCO that has a NIL collective and stuff like that, right? So yeah, so the landscape is not even, it's not even on even playing fields. When it comes to them in this conference, it's night and day,
Right.
and yeah, so it's It's definitely a difference.
I think DeAndre, I think you were saying since the release of the show and since you guys were been there, they generated enough money to build
Yeah.
a indoor practice facility as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's been talks over there, where, they're in talks of building, an indoor facility and stuff like
Wow.
that. If you know anything about that, that takes, a couple $1 million to put something like that up,
Yes, it
especially
does.
at this level, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and
In
like I said,
scuba, where
NIL
it's not even
collective.
that cold. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
all this is
exactly.
luxury, okay?
Exactly.
There wasn't
Exactly.
even when I was in school in Massachusetts, that team didn't even have an indoor facility. Like this
Yeah.
is a big
Yeah.
deal for a JUCO program in Mississippi to have an indoor facility. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
crazy.
lot.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to me, Andrew, about where we are in the litigation process. What's next? How long is this supposed to take? Break that down for us.
Sure. So the every defendant was served. So I always give a funny example for those that don't know what service is. Whoever's seen the movie Pineapple Express at the very beginning, Seth Rogen is dressed up in different costumes and going around and giving documents to people. But that's a formal requirement under the rules of civil procedure. So each defendant has been served. We have granted extensions of times to respond to our complaint. Right now to the defendants, each of whom have requested an extension to respond to it. Once they get the responses in, whatever that may be, they might want to not respond and settle it outside of court. They may want to respond, and we will reply to those responses if they do file them. Once that occurs, the judge will make a ruling upon those filings. If the judge, assuming that the defendants will file a motion to dismiss, which is 99% of the time the first dispositive motion that is filed. Um, Assuming the judge denies those motions, then we'll proceed to discovery. And it is a lengthy timeline given the size of some of these corporations, given the amount of individuals that played a role in the production of the show. We would conduct depositions and things of that nature. So it's not going to be a quick timeline unless they want to resolve the matter in an efficient way and unless they propose something that's equitable.
Hmm. Hmm. And then, so what's next for you guys, DeAndre and John? Where are you at now? What's on the horizon outside of the litigation? What's going on in y'all's lives?
Yeah, I would say for me right now, coaching, like I say, giving back, trying to be the guy, when I was coming through the JUCO process that you know, being a guy that I wanted to have in my corner. I'm trying to provide that for these kids right now. Of course, I want to continue, to progress and move on up, climb the coaches ladder and, potentially, become a head coach one day at the highest level. And in the meantime, also, starting a digital asset, consulting firm. So that's what I got going on.
Cool. What about you, John?
Uh, finally kind of crossed that road where I'm hanging up my cleats. So
Welcome to
time,
retirement.
yeah, retiring from ball. I'm excited about it. I'm a full-time dad now. Got my little man. He turns 1 next month in April, so that's mind blowing. Still doing my real estate. Thinking about going back to school, getting my master's so I could represent players NIL, and I don't want to be an agent, but I think I want to represent players and help them, maneuver this.
Yeah.
College football is a beast. Um, and just helping them maneuver whether it's transfer portal or NIL. I just feel like there's a lot of bad misrepresentation representation out there for a lot of these players. They don't have sound advice. They don't know how to move the right ways, and felt like I've been like a pioneer in that aspect of knowing how to maneuver certain situations, whether good or bad, when it comes to your career. And I never wanted to be a coach, but it's something I've been dabbling with. The idea of, like DeAndre said, wanting to be that person that I wish I had. I feel like a coach plays a pivotal role in a kid's life, and especially in the junior college space.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of people's like that's that crossroads that I always talk about, and having the right person be there to pour into you could make your life a whole lot different. And having someone that's there and kind of self-egotistical and all about them could also make turn your life into a different path. So Um, it was something that I was always turned off to based off my experiences with coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But from my wife being a coach and just a couple coaches that I respect in profession, I feel like it's something that just naturally aligns
Yeah.
with me and something that I'll probably be in my near future here sooner than later.
Yeah. No, I think that's great for both of you guys based on your experiences, everything you've been through, would be so valuable to help out the youth, especially with the landscape changing. I mean, you guys were literally the godfathers almost of NIL before
Hmm.
NIL was a thing. So it's like now that you've already been through the process, now when these guys are going to be featured on documentaries again, like Coach Prime's show is showing college players, you're able to speak to that experience and maybe some of the things that you guys would have done differently. But this has been such a great conversation. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you guys want to say, whether it's about your experience, the lawsuit, or any advice for young athletes coming up in the game?
I would say,
I just, oh, go ahead, Dre. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead, go
I
ahead.
was about to say, man, to the young athletes out there, the guys, that's up and coming, man, that's trying to really make a path, for themselves, man. For one, just keep God first, have a great support circle, and just like I just tell my teammates all the time, man, just understanding who you are, and what you represent, and what that last name on your back, and what you wanted, to hold, as you continue to like to further, your education and your playing career, throughout life, man. Always, be conscious of that, and just be aware of your surroundings, man. And anything's possible, and you have to stand up for yourself, right? And but there's a certain way, that you can go about doing that. And don't let nobody take advantage of you, man. And it's just you know, go out there and then make it happen, man. And leave it all out there and fill up the bucket. Don't have no regrets. One thing I can say with this, regardless of how my career turned out, is that I have no regrets. You
Right.
know, I did it, the way I wanted to do it, and I feel like I've done it, in a professional manner, my whole career, and and I'm happy with that, and I can hang my hat on that. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Dre said. That's one thing I always try to tell people. Something I had to learn going through college is you have to live your life for you, making decisions for you. And it's really one of those times where you just have to be selfish, especially if you have the dream of wanting to become a professional at anything. I feel like not even just a sport, you have to be selfish about that. Because you're the one that has to do the work. You're the one that has to go out there and run. You're the one that has to be away from your family and miss Thanksgivings and the Christmases and all of that. Um, one thing my parents always instilled in us growing up was all you have in this world is your name and your word. So make sure you leave in both of those a good notes, you know what I'm saying? Do what you say you're gonna do and represent, you know what I'm saying? People your name is gonna carry you longer than whatever you did. People gonna remember how you treated them, people gonna remember
Mhm.
what you did for them, how you made them feel. And that's the stuff that's gonna last a lifetime. Relationships that those same coaches that yeah you might not rock with, it's a way to handle that coach because 10 years down the road you might need that coach to get you a job.
Right.
That's just how that's how it works. And relationships and life is everything. Necessarily ain't about what you know, it's about who you know. And treat people in a way that you want them to treat you and remember you for, in a good light. But
Mhm.
yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, whether your dream works out or not, you have to be able to look in the mirror and be okay with that.
Mhm.
You can't look in the mirror and be like, oh, I did it because my dad said this. Like, nah, like, mental health is real. Um, and you just got to be okay with whatever happens, but you have to be the one that's in charge of that.
Yeah, that's great. And Andrew, I'm going to give you opportunity too. Any words of advice or encouragement for young lawyers, aspiring sports attorneys?
Well, I'm a young lawyer myself. I think
But
the one
acting
thing
like
I'll
a vet, okay? Young lawyer,
yeah, well, I was gonna
vet.
say, I think the one thing I'll say is with our firm, a lot of lawyers and law firms are scared to take on these massive corporations, these big businesses. they think that they have these impenetrable attorneys and law firms. My firm, we're not massive on the scale. We all come from highly educated backgrounds. My boss is a Harvard graduate, editor on the Harvard Law Review. I went to the University of Miami. Was on Miami Law Review. The
Florida
research,
boy.
yeah, Florida, never left. But you know, uh, if it's the right thing to do and there's a equitable basis, and your client is pursuing something that they believe in, go for it. For sure, never be scared to take on a challenge against one of these massive corporations. Because if you don't, I mean, they'll just keep rolling right over you. And like we just saw with the NCAA, they had to learn. They can't keep taking advantage of such young kids who are just
Right.
pursuing their dreams.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you all so much for chatting with me. I'm rooting for you. Definitely going to be following this story. And thank you so much for giving me an excuse to watch the show again. But thank you all. Thank you for joining Chanel's Court, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chanel.
Cool.